A disappointing season for Alabama in 2024. You have to wonder if this is the new normal with life after Nick Saban, or will Alabama get back to being Alabama in 2025? We're going to break down the schedule and give you a very early projected record for the Crimson Tide. And just a quick reminder, we do have an Alabama channel. If you're an Alabama fan, go check it out and subscribe. You should see a card pop up on your screen. Also a link down in the description below. Alabama's schedule in 2024 was really a tougher schedule than what we usually see from Alabama. It was a tough schedule. And then we look at 2025, it's going to be tough again. In fact, I think you can make an argument that it's going to be even tougher in 2025. Here is that full schedule. We're going to break it down. First, we will look at the non-conference, and they're going to have Florida State on the road. So I know Florida State was not very good last year, but still, we're talking about two Power 4 teams. We're playing Florida State on the road, then ULM, Wisconsin, and Eastern Illinois. Now, I realize Florida State, Wisconsin, these are not powerhouse teams right now. These are really good football programs, though, historically. And you never know. I mean, these teams could bounce back this year, could be a lot better. The Florida State game is on the road. So, yeah, you're stepping up a little bit here. Last year just played Wisconsin. This year you got Florida State and Wisconsin. So the non-conference will be tougher for Alabama. I don't think it'll be – I mean, they should clearly be better than these two teams unless one of them, like, really turns things around from where they were last year. But it is, again, it's still a tougher non-conference schedule. And, of course, their conference schedule is going to stay the same. We just switch the home and away. So the home games for them this year, I talked about ULM, Wisconsin, Eastern Illinois down at the bottom. But then in the SEC, they'll have Vanderbilt, Tennessee, LSU, and Oklahoma. So they do have some of their big games at home. We're talking Tennessee, LSU, and Oklahoma. I remember they lost on the road to Tennessee last year, lost on the road to Oklahoma, also lost on the road to Vanderbilt. So those are home field advantage absolutely matters. It absolutely matters. Lost all their games on the road last year. This time they get those games at home, but on the road, again, talked about Florida State. And they're going to have Georgia, Missouri, South Carolina, and Auburn. So we're talking about a Georgia team that should be really, really good. They always are. Missouri, we'll see. South Carolina, a lot of hype for them coming into this year. That was a close game last year. And then Auburn, that team's trending in the right direction. So they really, they don't get any breaks. I mean, you don't get a Mississippi State. You don't get a Kentucky. Those teams that maybe weren't very good last year and are not expected to be great this year. Vanderbilt, probably the easiest opponent on this schedule. Vandy beat them last year. So this is a really, really tough schedule for Alabama. They'll start off with that game against Florida State on August 30th on the road, week 1. Going to be a big matchup. Again, I don't know what Florida State's going to look like. They've done a lot of work in the transfer portal. I don't know if they're going to bounce back this year, or maybe they're similar to I think they're definitely better than last year, but how much better, that's going to be the question. But still, playing on the road week 1, that's going to be an interesting game. Now, Alabama has a lot of pieces to replace as well. So who knows what we're going to get in that game. ULM on September 6th. Then it's Wisconsin on September 13th, this time at home. Feel pretty good about that game if you're Alabama. They'll get their first bye week after that and then jump into SEC play with a very tough game at Georgia. Of course, that first half last year from Alabama was about as good of a half of football as we saw maybe from anyone last season, but Georgia came storming back. What a game that was. That was a crazy game. So this year, is it going to be close? Is it going to be kind of like last year? I have no idea what's going to happen here, but obviously it's a very tough game, probably the toughest game on the schedule, being Georgia and also being on the road. Vanderbilt after that, so you get Vandy right after a very tough road game against Georgia, and then it's back on the road for Missouri October 11th. Home for Tennessee on October 18th, and back on the road for South Carolina on October 25th. So this is a brutal stretch. I mean, it's just brutal. You've got 3 road games. You've got no easy games. Tennessee rivalry game, that's one of your home games. It's just those 5 games, 3-2 I think would be a win for Alabama. If they could get to 3-2 in those games and then finish out strong with these final 4 games, they get their other bye week before playing LSU on November 8th. That one will be at home again this year. And then Oklahoma, also that one will be at home this year. So big advantage, obviously, with home field advantage in those 2 games. But still tough opponents, very tough opponents there. Good news is that those games are at home, then Eastern Illinois at home, and then you finish things out on the road at Auburn. So this final stretch, these final 4 games, yeah, you're playing good teams. That's going to be some tough games in there, but it's not horrible. I'm looking at that middle stretch again. Georgia to South Carolina. Georgia, this is a top tier team. South Carolina is a team that a lot of people have as a potential playoff team this year. Same thing with Tennessee, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. Maybe not quite as good, but still, those won't be easy wins. So this is a very, very tough schedule for Alabama. And if you just look at how their SEC schedule stacks up, these are the teams that these are the opponents for 2025. This is their winning percentages from 2024. So Alabama's opponents in 2025 went 34-30 last season. They had a winning record in the SEC. So Alabama does have one of the tougher schedules in terms of just total opponents. But I will say, just the way it sets up, that middle stretch really is going to be tough for Alabama. I don't know about we'll do our schedule rankings later on, but I would think that Alabama probably has right there in the top 3. I'd say they probably have one of the top 3 toughest schedules in the SEC. What will Alabama's record be in 2025? We're going to give you that projection. But first, let's look at how our projections have been the last 4 years. And keep in mind, these are not my personal predictions. This is simply a projection based off of our formula. We have a projection formula that is based off of, obviously, the teams that you play and where those teams rank in our tier system. So you look at 2021, projection was 11-1, their record 11-1. You look at 2022, projection 11-1, the record was 10-2. In 2023, 10-2 is the projection. They went 11-1, and last season projection was 9-3, record was 9-3. So the projection has been very accurate for Alabama. Only missed it by 1 game in 22 and 23. It was exactly right in 21 and 24. So yeah, again, this projection has come out very accurate with Alabama. We'll see what it looks like for 2025. A very tough schedule, and here's that schedule. This is the scale that we use. So if it's a 50-50 game, those are going to be the games in the white. This is basically, so Alabama is a tier 2 team in our tier rankings. If they play a tier 3 team, then that game bumps into the purple, the 61 to 70% range. But if it is on the road, it drops back to 50-50. Any other tier 2 teams that they play will be 50-50 games no matter what, no matter where those games are played. And they do have several tier 2 teams. They've got Tennessee, they've got South Carolina, and they've got LSU. So they got 3 of those. So that's going to be 3 toss-ups right there. And then, if they're 2 tiers ahead of a team, then that game's going to be in the blue, the 71 to 80% range. But if that game were on the road, then it would drop to the 61 to 70% range. So hopefully that makes sense. You can kind of look at this in terms of point spreads. 50-50 games going to be games where the point spread's probably going to be about 3 or 4 or 5 points, and then 60 to 70, more like a touchdown, 7, 8, 9 points, 71 to 80, double-digit spreads, and then 80%. Maybe 20 points or more, something like that. Again, it's not based off of point spreads, but that's just one way to look at it. And the games in the green, the 80% and above, those games are going to be counted as wins when we do the formula. All right, so you got 2 of those, ULM and Eastern Illinois. Normally, Alabama does not have only 2 of these games. You've usually got like 4 at least. Only 2 like easy wins for Alabama, because this schedule is very, very tough. We go to the games in the blue, and they do have 3 of those. So they got Florida State, Wisconsin, and Vanderbilt. Now, again, this is based off of our tier rankings, and the way it works is from last year to this year, we could only move teams up or down by 1 tier. And Florida State was at the very, very bottom. They were in the bottom tier. So I kind of think they're going to bounce back and be much better, and that game probably should not be in the blue. But there is no human element to this. This is all based off of these numbers. And so because of where they were last year, they could not move up enough. And that game is actually in the blue. But I do think that the point spread for that game is, well, I guess it could be double digits. So that could still kind of actually work out. Wisconsin's spread will probably be like 16, 17. Vanderbilt, I think, will be double digits. I know Vanderbilt beat them last year, but I think most people would agree that Alabama was the better team overall. They just had a bad day on that day, and they're at home this time. So that should make for a much easier game. And so you've got 3 of those games, and then you've got just 1 game in the purple. That's Oklahoma. Alabama is a tier above Oklahoma. We've got Oklahoma as a tier 3 team. I know Oklahoma beat them last year, but again, if you look at the entire season, I think most people would say Alabama was the better team, and they're playing this one at home. So very similar to that Vanderbilt game. I do think they'll be a clear underdog against Georgia, probably about a touchdown underdog on the road. That, again, will be a tough matchup there against a really good team, and again, away from home. So that's why that one does turn out to be in the yellow. I mean, if I had to guess right now, I'd say Alabama's probably going to be about an 8-point underdog in that game. I don't know if any early lines are out, but yeah, that's going to be a tough one. A winnable game, but a tough game. And then you've got the rest of these games is 50-50 games. So Missouri is tier 3, Auburn is tier 3, but those games are on the road. That's why they're considered 50-50 games. Then you've got Tennessee, South Carolina, and LSU. All of those opponents are, those are tier 2 teams. Both, all those games are going to be games that could really go either way. We are figuring on LSU being a little bit better from where they were last year. And again, South Carolina finished the season really hot. Tennessee should be right there again. So you've got a bunch of tough games. And if you just look at, let's just ignore the blue and the green. The games that are 50-50 games, or the games that, it wouldn't be crazy to see an upset in. Either team could definitely win. You've got Georgia, you've got Missouri, you've got Tennessee, you've got South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, and Auburn. That's 7 games on this schedule. 7 games that really could go either way. Again, they're not all 50-50 games, but it would not be a surprise to see either team win any of those games. So if you cut those in half, you've got 3.5 losses right there. And again, when we do the percentages here with Florida State, Wisconsin, and Vanderbilt, there is a chance they lose one of those games, and it actually comes out to 8-4. So an 8-4 projection, that has got to be the lowest projection that Alabama has had. Like, if we had done this formula going all the way back to like 2010, this has to be the lowest projection. And I think it's a combination of this team not being quite as good as they have been in the past. They're not quite that tier 1 team. And also the fact that this is a brutal schedule. I mean, it's just a really, really tough schedule. 2 Power 4 teams in the non-conference, a bunch of really good opponents in the SEC, no easy wins in the SEC, and only 2 easy wins overall. Like I said, that's just not something we usually see with an Alabama schedule. So a very tough schedule for Alabama. 9-3 is probably a pretty good season, but that's probably not going to get them in the college football playoff, depending on what happens with the rest of the country. So this would, I think, be a very disappointing season, but I don't think it would actually be a horrible season just because of, again, how tough this schedule is in 2025. Just a quick reminder that memberships are now available. So before you go, if you want to become a member, go ahead, sign up today. You can get early access to videos like this, exclusive emojis, badges, priority, reply to comments, all kinds of things. Check it out. Become a member today. And of course, give me your thoughts on Alabama. What do you think the record's going to be? Let me know down in the comments below.